Well, I guess it's about that time. Get started and talk about a super exciting subject of website hosting and security. I see there's a few new faces out there. Looks like Diana. Hi, how are you doing? Corey, looks like Corey joined us. If anybody's got any questions, and let me back up. I'm going to start this off, and I hope everybody that's here and involved gets some information out of the topics I'm going to cover today. To be honest, I struggled a little bit kind of putting it all together because I want to make it useful for everybody that joins. So if you've got questions, I'm going to cover some Zoom basics in the chat window and how to raise your hand to hopefully make this a bit more interactive. I know this subject kind of as a whole, well, both of these subjects as a whole can be a little dry, so hopefully we can answer some questions and get some information out there, and everybody will take a little bit away from this. I'm Jeremy Maurer, COO of webFEAT Complete. A lot of what my core kind of functionality or core here is networking. We'll step to the about me part here in just a couple of minutes. As I said, I want to cover some Zoom basics. If anybody wants to jump in and say they've got it or they know it and kind of skip over these, let me know. Otherwise, I would like to at least touch on these a little bit so that everybody kind of knows what's going on. There's a chat window, which I think most of you I've kind of chatted with already just to kind of kick that off and make it a bit easier. We have muted everybody so that there's not a lot of distraction or interruption for everybody so everybody can hear. The screen that you see now that's up there shows you what your screen will look like. I believe that you can unmute yourself or it'll ask to unmute you so that we can physically talk, which I think we all at some point like to do. As we get further along in the chat, which we kind of just talked about, I encourage everybody to throw a question up there. Jake's on with me from webFEAT Complete to kind of help co-host and keep things moving along and grab those questions as I get wrapped up in some of these topics. There's also a raised hand function that we're going to talk about. So if you have a question that's a bit more involved about the subject or you want to converse, raise your hand, kind of follow along the prompts here. There's a button down at the bottom right that will allow you to raise your hand, and it signals us to let us know that you've got a question or you want to ask something. We do have some more upcoming events I think that would be beneficial for many people, especially if you've got a website and you're attending this particular webinar. I believe up next is Justin and social ad and geo-targeting, which I think is a great subject. Geo-targeting in itself is some pretty cool, pretty fun technology. E-commerce, which I think a lot of people are doing, especially in this particular situation with the pandemic. I think everybody can benefit from that. Blogging bootcamp, I think kind of speaks for itself. Email marketing, we all love our email, I'm sure. And then getting your money's worth with Google Ads. Sorry, distraction, chat window. Getting your money's worth with Google Ads is another one in August. I think is another great way to kind of monopolize on some SEO and search engine, social media. SEO, SEM is where I was going with that. There's a link down here, and Jake, will you throw that link in the chat window for them, just for anybody who's interested? So about us, about webFEAT Complete. We're digital marketing. We've been around for a long time. I hope people have heard of us. We've been in Cincinnati since 1999. We've got 3 locations throughout the United States, and we're continuing to grow. We're one of the largest agencies in Cincinnati. We've been here for a long time. We've put our footprint in Cincinnati, and it's our headquarters, and we continue to outreach Chicago and Denver and as many areas as we can get into, I think is ultimately the goal. Some of our services, Website design, I think that's kind of a given based on the company. Search engine optimization and social media management, I think everybody is looking for those items, and we've tried to put really key players in place and keep everybody educated and stay on the trends. Reputation management, lead generation, which is always good for help, driving sales. Content management, writing blogs and editing. Google Ads and pay-per-click or PPC management. And then this particular topic, website hosting and email hosting. About myself. I've been with webFEAT Complete for 12 years as of yesterday, so yay me. It's been a lot of years, it's been a lot of work, but I enjoy it, I think it's fun. Some background, I did 11 years doing desk side support, help desk kind of work, viruses and malware cleanup. I am a graduate from ITT back in 2007. Yes, they don't exist anymore. I know that's the question. This year, I actually completed one of my own professional goals and became a CEH, or a Certified Ethical Hacker. As soon as the situation that we currently have with the pandemic releases, I'm scheduled to complete my CompTIA Security Plus, which is a piggyback on the CEH. And then I've done a lot of offensive security training, and it is kind of what it sounds. It's offensive security, kind of knowing how the hackers do what they do and to prevent them by understanding it. Why do I do what I do? It's constant learning. There's trends and constant reading that you have to do to, help my own business as well as other businesses grow. The web is definitely a large place with lots of terms and lots of terminology that are often just tossed around, and businesses get lost in navigating it. There's a lot of tech that challenge. There's also a lot of tech that gets tossed around that businesses don't focus on or don't find important because they're running a business. And so I enjoy the technology aspect of it, and learning new applications and playing with new things, and just refining skills to help allow businesses, small, medium, large, take advantage of somebody who enjoys kind of being in that situation or being around those types of things. Justin, I'm going to throw you under the bus on this one a little bit, but he introduced me as the wizard, and as my tenure has grown longer and longer around webFEAT Complete's office, I kind of became known as the wizard internally, and I was going to write where I think it came from, or tell you how I think it came about. And so instead of telling you where I think it came from or what I think it is, I asked a friend of mine and a colleague, and his response was, it's on the screen and I'll read it for you guys, but the wizard name came about from team members working with me on system issues or network issues. And over time, it became known that for complex issues, that I was the resource that could resolve time-consuming issues. So some seemingly impossible to complete tasks resolved in minutes. By resolving issues that slowed employees down and taking on complex projects, team members felt like I was a wizard of problem-solving technical issues. And Ray says that he saves conversations from earlier in the day because they can be mind melters. So thank you, Ray, but I try not to melt minds too frequently, but on occasion I do enjoy a solid mind-melting conversation that dives into something a little complex. So that's kind of where the wizard came from. Certified Ethical Hacker, and I'm sure there's a couple of people asking what is it and why. The definition as it sits is there, but it goes back to the offensive security stuff that I was talking about. It's really kind of knowing what they do, and I'm using air quotes, but how hackers do what they do, and understanding it to help prevent, and using the skills and the tools that they have available to them in a situation to be beneficial to us as businesses and business owners and business operators of websites. Having somebody kind of in your tool belt, or in your contacts, that has those skills, or that has some skills of that nature, can be definitely beneficial to keeping you protected. We'll talk about a definite handful of situations where having somebody like this could be beneficial to assess your site and even your network. So our agenda for today, as I see some more people joining us, a registrar, and let me back up a little bit. I'm trying to bring this kind of full circle for everybody who's involved, from businesses and website owners. Of you need a domain name, or you've got a new company and you want to start a new website. What does the registrar do, and what kind of role do they play for you? Kind of who and what they do for you. Hosting and what it is, what can be hosted. A static site versus a dynamic site, and we'll kind of touch on some of the pros and cons of that. Frameworks or platforms, depending on what you want to call that particular piece. But to mention a few, WordPress, I'm sure everybody's kind of heard of, or at least talked about. Joomla and Drupal are other popular items in terms of CMSs or frameworks. And then we'll transition into website and server security, and all the items that kind of carry on with that. The types of attacks and their impacts of things that a hacker or a black hat or somebody like that's going to look at and assess from your site. Protecting your site, and how you can go about some of the items to look at or take into account in terms of protection. Maintenance and housekeeping, I'm sure nobody loves that, but it's a needed function to keep things on the up and up and keep your site performing for you. Your website's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week salesperson, and as much as we're glad that we don't necessarily have to pay them a paycheck, we still need to give them a little care and make sure that they have everything they need to kind of keep moving. And then we'll kind of pull it all together and have some conversation kind of towards the end about how all these things play together, and the idea at the end of how all the stuff works together and how we can get everything working together to our advantage to make the web and websites work for us. And then I'm hoping that people have questions or at least want to chat a little bit towards the end of this presentation or the end of this webinar. So I've allocated 10-15 minutes at the end of this for a question and answer. Anything, we'll open mics, or we'll open video if you want a video chat. Just have some question and answers about kind of all the stuff that we talked about, anything that came up. If you've got a question as we go along about a particular subject, definitely throw your hand or throw it up in chat, and Jake or Corey or myself will jump on it. And depending on the question or what have you, we'll go ahead and jump into it right then, or we can hold it till the end. So hopefully everybody enjoys this, and we can have some fun and learn some things. A little bit of vocab lesson. I'll probably do this once or twice, but it's some common stuff I think that'll get tossed around as we go through this particular subject. I'll refer to things in different acronyms, or as we toss it around as far as lingo goes. So I'm trying to help make sure that we're all talking about the same thing in that relation. A domain name, I think we all kind of know what that is. We call it an URL, or a uniform resource locator. It's typically what you type into your browser to find something. DNS, the kind of short or the real answer is, it's essentially a phone book. It tells your browser or service what IP address to go to for that requested info. So you type in google.com, DNS says go to this IP, that server answers, and that's kind of what you see. Email, I hope everybody's good on this particular item, but it's essentially, it's just electronic mail. It's a form of communication that nobody really has to talk. Email filtering is a bit different. It's typically a service provided that will help determine whether or not your inbound or incoming email is either spam or a legitimate message. SSL, which is another big topic, secure socket layer, it encrypts the traffic or encrypts the communication between your browser and your site or your device and the service on the other end. FTP, as much as it's still used, I don't want to call it an antiquated protocol, but it's a super great basic way to get files from point A to point B. Typically, before CMSs became what they are today, it was a super common way to upload your site, as they would typically say, to a hosting server to allow you to update your files or make changes. It's still really used from a static site perspective, but it's something that's kind of fading away. Any questions before I jump into the registrar? Anybody have anything? No? So registrar, who and what do they do? I put the definition up there. It's a company that they manage the reservation of internet domain names. The domain registrar is typically accredited by region, if you will, America, Latin America, that type of thing. And they will allow you to purchase a domain name. What's the short answer? The real answer? They say who owns what and for how long and where to look for the DNS answers. This graphic I try to throw out there to kind of bring it all around for everybody so that they get it. On the left, right here, the registrant, i.e. us, you, anybody who's looking to buy a domain name. A reseller would just be somebody who is, a reseller for typically one of these type of companies, Network Solutions, Web.com, GoDaddy. You can sign up to be a registered reseller for these companies. The registrars, Network Solutions, Web.com, GoDaddy, those guys, they all handle the paperwork and the filings that are needed to say that John Doe owns jdoe.com. And then that's where this database piece kind of falls into play. The database, it's a database of all domains registered. That gets pointed over to ICANN that says all these domain names, the domain name system, and where to go to find the information. Hosting. So you have a domain name, now what do you do with it? Well, you need hosting. What is hosting? It's an environment built and designed to serve a set of files or a database engine or a web application. I kind of threw the real answer thing down here again, where your files live or where your email lives. And the reason I left it where your files live and kind of loose is that as much as it's websites that we're really talking about, it could be email services, it could be a web application, it could be a portal of some sort that you access that may not be a website. It might be where you open tickets for troubleshooting or something along those lines. But the general gist is you as the owner need a hosting server. That hosting server is what is sitting out, if you will, on the internet, and people looking for you or your services will search you, and that's how they get driven to your website. Can you register your domain name outside of resellers? If you're ICANN, Naomi, typically you have to be a reseller that is registered via one of the top level domain controllers, GoDaddy Network Solutions. Going through the process to get ICANN registered for a single domain name is financially and time-consumingly not of benefit, considering the paperwork and the ISO certifications that go along with that. Sure. Domain name server, what can be hosted? Short answer, everything on this screen that you see here can be hosted. DNS can be hosted. Again, it's the phone book, and you have to think of it as, location A has this phone number and location B has this phone number. So DNS really tells these other areas, your website, your email filtering, where to go to find those things. So when we set up email on our phones, there's a DNS record that says, go here to log into my email server. Website definitely can be hosted, whether it's HTML or a content management system, that can definitely be hosted, and that's super, typically that's the common thing when people hear the word hosting, that's what instantly pops into their mind. Email is obviously can be hosted, to mention a few, Office 365, Gmail is obviously a hosted option. It's a free service, yes, but it's still hosted somewhere. Company-based, whether it's on your own server or outsourced or whatever the situation, it can be in its own location. Email filtering is also a solution that's typically applied to your email, but it can be third party. It doesn't have to be in the same place as your email. There are services that are out there that will filter email. So for instance, if you host your own company email on a small business server that you have inside your organization and you need email filtering because you're getting too much spam, there are services out there that will route your DNS correctly so that you can have that filtering option and kind of increase what you've got in terms of reducing the amount of spam. Who should do what? Well, there's not one answer, and there's no correct answer. As far as order of importance goes, which in my world and what I deal with on a day-to-day basis, DNS is of the most important because it's the phone book. It tells everybody and everything where to go. Email would be next. I mean, it's communication. It allows you, obviously, to do business. You can communicate at that level. As we were just talking about email filtering, it falls into that same boat. It can be included as a service at the email hosting provider or as an add-on, a third-party service that specific function is to filter email. Suzette, to answer your question, for simplicity, would you want everything under one umbrella? My answer from my company perspective, sure, yes. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's really determined by your company's needs or your company's functions that you need allowable to you. Some email providers are very basic and don't support additional IMAP or SSL-based IMAP or POP connections. You may need video chat that might not be included in the services that they offer. Some webmail interfaces definitely don't have as many creature comforts as most people are used to, especially with Gmail as an example. So yes, it would be easier to maintain and control under one umbrella, but I go back to it's really dictated on what you need or what your company needs from a feature function level. Who should do what? Website definitely can be hosted and is obviously important. Bandwidth and database engine and FTP are both typically included in the website hosting aspect of it. Website hosting, bandwidth, file size, database size are all good key things that you want to take a look at. But again, it's dependent on what type of site you have. Do you need e-commerce? Do you need SSL? Do you need a database, or is it a static site? And as we carry on through this webinar today or this afternoon, we'll hopefully some of these answers will kind of reveal themselves to you as far as who should do what. Sometimes it's dollars and cents. Sometimes it's about convenience. Static and dynamic sites, and I think this is where we're going to start getting into hopefully some questions from everybody. But websites can really be split into two different types: static and dynamic. And static is a bit older and a bit more common in HTML. Static websites are ones that are fixed and display the same content for every user. they're typically written in HTML, which is hypertext markup language. On the opposite side of that, you've got a dynamic website, which is one that can display different content and provide user interactions. They make use of advanced programming and databases, back to the database engine stuff, in addition to the HTML. Static websites are easier to create, while dynamic websites require more work and maintenance. Typically, a dynamic site is written using server-side scripting, PHP, I'm sure we've all heard of. Some of the people that have been around websites a little longer, I'm sure have heard of ASP or active server pages. JSP, which is Java, all of those need databases. Almost all dynamically driven sites, unless they're custom coded or have some special functionality to read XML, and I won't go that route too much. They all have they're all CMSs, and they all typically have an administrative portal that allows you to manage it and change content and add pages and really manipulate the site to what you want it to be. HTML, I put this up here. Ray, here's that Easter egg we were talking about earlier, but HTML, hypertext markup language. The reason I put this up here is to kind of illustrate the difference between a CMS and an HTML website. The two screens that you see up here, the one more so in the black, and it looks kind of like a lot of code. It is code. It's HTML code that gets you the output of what's on the right. The big drawback, if you will, for HTML is you have to go through this stuff to get this stuff. It's fast. Let me jump to the next screen before I'm jumping ahead because I'm getting excited. You have to know a little bit of code on the left to get what you need in the output on the right. Cascading style sheets is what drives the look and the style of what you see there a lot for sure. It's kind of the core, if you will, of the internet and what it was kind of built on, and things have progressed from HTML to get. This is a WordPress admin, a dynamic website. It allows you to interact with your site. It gives you feedback about what's going on. More so talking about your page count, how many comments have been posted, or how many posts are been put up. Quick draft, obviously compared to the previous screen, there was no quick draft. There was no way for you to create a post right as soon as you log into the admin or the CMS admin area to create something. And so you can see between this screen and this screen, they're drastically different in terms of how you go about making edits and doing what you need to do to make changes on your site. Website CMS stands for Content Management System. I put the definition up here, but it's software or an application that uses database to manage all content and can be used when developing a website. And when we say, or I reference content, it could be a product, it could be a blog post, it could be a news article, it could be a call to action, on the home page, something that you're engaging the user to click on. All of that is content. If it's presented and has an action or a function or can be read, it's content. And so this collection of icons or logos, if you will, are a lot of the top or common things that you'll come across as far as content management systems. Drupal's on here, Joomla's on here, WordPress is on here, PrestaShop and Shopify. I think Shopify got taken out of this for some reason. Magento, which is an e-commerce option. Ruby on Rails, I'm sure we've all heard about it or at least heard the name mentioned. Webmail, Roundcube Webmail, which is another option. Let's see. Jake's got a question here. What CMS are you all using? WordPress, Wix, Shopify, Drupal? I would definitely be curious to kind of hear what everybody's got to chime in. If whoever's in here, let's see, Diana, Suzette or Naomi, Yvonne, looks like you're in there too. I'd definitely be curious to see, or at least hear what you guys are using for CMS. The battle. This is the battle. Static versus dynamic. You'll have a half a dozen people tell you static is the best, and you'll have the other half a dozen people tell you that dynamic is the best. And kind of to go back to the conversation earlier, it's really about what your needs are. Just like the GIF argument, and much like Apple versus PC, having a static side or a dynamic side is just a matter of opinion and a matter of need. A couple pros and cons on the static side. Code's fast. It's a simple structure. However, there's no management portal, and you've got to know some code, whether it's CSS or HTML or how to integrate JavaScript, to be able to get your site to do what you ultimately want it to do. On the other side of that, you've got dynamic. It's super flexible. You can lots of functionality. You can add functionality via add-ins or add-ons and plugins. It's 95% of the time pretty easy to manage. There's usually some kind of clues in the graphical user interface that'll kind of point you in the right direction. There's no real code knowledge needed. You can add plugins that are fairly easy to do. You can, change the style and make some edits, all via the web interface. It's meant to be easy for people to use. I'm kind of cruising along, I guess, a little bit, and I got to this point a little faster than I anticipated, but I've got a video for everybody to kind of take a look at it. It's definitely webFEAT Complete's video about our WordPress protection plan. And the idea behind this video is we've gotten through the registrar stuff. We've talked about DNS. We've talked about hosting a little bit. We've talked about static sites versus dynamic sites. And I'm hoping this video with a great narrator will help shift gears a little bit as we transition into security and housekeeping and some server-side stuff. There's going to be some acronyms and some terms and terminology that are tossed around that may be foreign or not foreign to you. So hopefully we'll take it. It's about, I want to say about 3 minutes, a little over 3 minutes, maybe almost 4 minutes to kind of ramp up and kind of change our mindset a little bit. Meanwhile, while the video is playing, if anybody's got any questions or anything, definitely feel free to put them up there.
When webFEAT Complete began in 1999, we sold websites. Because at the time, all you needed was a website. But as the internet exploded, hackers made it their goal to destroy online businesses by exploiting site code vulnerabilities. webFEAT Complete has made it our mission to stay ahead of the hackers with state-of-the-art website hosting capabilities. When you build a website, you need a server to host that website. It's where your website lives, like a digital address. But having a website comes with inherent risk, and secure hosting is the best way to protect yourself. We've developed a plan called WP3, or WordPress Protection Plan, to help minimize risk and protect your website from external threats. It's like an insurance policy for your website and protects you from hackers, data loss, and more. Here are the key features of our WP3 program and why they make hosting your website with webFEAT Complete a safe, secure, and reliable choice for your business. We use a full packet inspection firewall with ACL and Snort on all of our servers. Each server has regularly updated antivirus software. In the event of significant power outages, we utilize a UPS inline battery backup with a natural gas generator in order to guarantee a 99% uptime. Websites are also stored on our offsite colo for additional disaster protection. You should be able to rely on your website and not worry about potential downtime. WP3 makes that possible. Websites have many moving parts, all of which need to be constantly updated in order to maintain speed and security standards. From themes and plugins to security and server software, keeping your site fully up to date is an important job. As a part of the WP3 program, we perform routine monthly updates without you having to worry. We take frequent on- and off-site backups. This way, your website data can always be restored in case of an undetected issue and is protected from human error. If you go to update a page on your website and accidentally hit delete instead, a backed up version on that page can easily be restored. By backing up your website, we protect you from small mishaps that could lead to information loss. WP3 is managed by real people, not robots. If you call our offices, you'll be connected with a knowledgeable, certified expert with decades of experience to answer your questions and resolve any potential issues. When you host your website with us, you get unlimited bandwidth from our lightning-fast fiber connection. You decide the services you need. You can host your website, email, and domain name services with us, or any combination of the three. Our email hosting includes sophisticated mail filtering and an easy-to-navigate interface. We can also provide SSLs and dedicated IP addresses. webFEAT Complete is the leading digital agency in Cincinnati. In addition to website hosting, our services include SEO, social media management, website design, website content management, and Google Ads management. To learn more, email sales@webfeatcomplete.com.
So hopefully that was a nice little break for a minute and maybe some coffee refills or Mountain Dew. I want to jump into and make this transition into security and maintenance. And I think now that we've gotten past the registrar and the DNS and the CMS piece of this, that the security and maintenance, and I'm sure cybersecurity is on everybody's mind, especially as the world continues in the particular situation that it's in. This subject in particular, it's a large, hot topic area. I've chosen to kind of talk about some of the common parts of it and their impact to you and to the site. A couple of items that we're going to touch on: a WAF or a web access firewall, and what is it? SSL, why and why it's important. Server-side technology that's used to help protect your sites. Hacks, there's the quotes again. Common types and the impact, which I'm sure people have seen kind of off and on, and then maintenance or housekeeping as we all tend to call it. I mean, it's kind of a needed thing. A WAF or a web application or web access firewall, as those terms are kind of tossed around. It protects web applications by filtering and monitoring HTTP traffic between the web application and the internet. A web application, to clarify a little bit, could be your website, could be your ticketing system, could be your customer service portal, anything that's served via the web or accessible via a browser is a web application. Typically, it protects the application from cross-site forgery, cross-site scripting, file inclusion, SQL injection, and there's many others. A couple more specific ones that we'll touch on in a few minutes. What does it do? It's a set of rules and policies that says allow or don't allow these particular things to come through. OWASP that jumps out at me on this image here it's an open source community that is driven at protecting websites and web applications. And they have rules and tons of information that's out there to help educate and people in my shoes and network guys to protect websites and engineers to protect websites and web applications. Bots, there's good bots and there's bad bots. Spam, I think we all know what that is. DDoS, I'm pretty sure we've all heard about that at one time or another, but it's just a denial of service attack. Somebody attacks your website, and if there's no protection in place, they'll take it down. They'll take it down by just overloading it, and the WAF is supposed to do that. Brute force attacks and hackers kind of fall into that same boat. Brute force attacks is a way a hacker can, get into your site and do different things. Zero-day attacks kind of fell into this. It's a vulnerability of some sort on your site that is brand new and only one or two people maybe know about, or an organization themselves know about. SSL, what is it and why is it important? SSL certificates are used to secure data transfers and credit card transactions, as well as logins and personal information. It's what provides the security to your customers and our customers to make them more likely to stay on the site, to know that the communication that's happening between my computer and your website or service is encrypted, to make it much harder for a hacker to steal the login in your site or your email. If your site has a login, you need an SSL. A lot of people use the same passwords or the same similar usernames on different sites. So having an SSL on your site encrypts that data. And if a hacker or somebody that's listening in on the network does get that data, they can't decrypt it. So there's no, it reduces and no fears the communication between me putting my username and password into your site. If you've got a form that asks for sensitive information, you're going to definitely need and want an SSL so that your customer's data isn't collected by a hacker and decrypted. If you've got an e-commerce website and you process credit cards, and there's a whole side subject on this that I won't dive into right now, but e-commerce websites, it's a requirement from PCI DSS, which is the payment card industry, for you to have an SSL before they will allow you to process credit cards on your website. So yes, an SSL is of huge importance to, one, secure your site and encrypt the data, and to help keep it safe and your users safe. Server-side technology. For me, I think this is a fun subject. Yes, I do have somewhat of an odd sense of fun. However, it's most of the things that we're going to cover, I work with on a daily basis. And it's kind of the core of the network, if you will, the lifeblood or the heart that helps keep sites that we host and sites that we protect secured and not hacked, and basically up and running and doing their job as that 24-hour a day, 7-day a week kind of unpaid salesperson. A couple of the items that I kind of grabbed that I thought were important was a server-side firewall. You know, we hear about networks having firewalls and stuff on the inbound as traffic comes into a network, but having an additional level or an additional layer of server-side installed at the server firewall to monitor and control what's coming in and out of that server based on some rules and traffic and ports will help keep your site secure. You know, a non-SSL site that has a contact form could be hacked in the sense that they could get your site, aka the server that's hosting your site, to fire out thousands of spam email, getting your site blacklisted and your domain blacklisted, which could have a ripple effect in terms of communication, you know, with current clients or potential new clients, especially if your domain name or your server has a bad reputation. A login failure daemon, basically it periodically checks for brute force logins. If there is one, it'll block it. It'll block the IP address and potentially lock out the account. IP access control, blocking somebody from, you know, Russia or China or something along those lines. Server-side technology says to allow or deny access from an IP or a range or a general geolocation to help reduce that attack surface or that attack vector. Mod security or mod sec is the internal people would typically talk about it. Komodo WAF, this is a web access firewall. Mod security is kind of a combination and a collection of multiple things funneled into one feature at the server level to stack technology in our favor to help protect the site and deter and block hackers and bad IP addresses and DDoS rules and a handful of other things to help protect that site before they actually touch your website. Any questions? And I know this subject is a bit dry, and I'm going to do my best to kind of keep it in realm and not dilly-dally on some of these items too much. But server-side technology, kind of the second screen here. File system lock kind of is what it says it is. It allows a server administrator to lock the files in a particular user's account so that nothing can be changed. Nobody internally, externally can edit or modify those files and inject or put in those things, anything that's malicious or not needed or that shouldn't be there. File integrity is another server-side piece of technology that's used to keep track and monitor files for potential modifications. Malware detection is another option. The antivirus piece that we heard about in the video. Software packages, whether it's Windows or Linux, that scans the system for malware or viruses to either quarantine them or remove them or apply the appropriate rule based on what it is. RK Hunter specifically, it's a Unix-based tool. It scans for rootkits and backdoors and possible local exploits. Its role and function is to do the same thing as basically an antivirus does. If it finds it, it quarantines it or deletes it or locks it and then reports on it so that the server admin or the site admin is notified when that type of thing happens. Hacks, and I think this is where all the fun stuff begins. The common types and the impact. No vocab for this part. I'll do my best with this to make it kind of painless. We're going to cover some stuff that's super common that we see from a cleanup perspective. Myself and Corey and a couple of colleagues have all dealt with a WordPress or a site that's been hacked and cleaning it up. Some of the stuff gets super intense, and as you see as we go through this, the logic that these guys use to get in and do these things it's surprising that people's brains kind of work this way, but I guess if they can do it, they're going to do it. Common types and the impact. A backdoor kind of is what it says it is. They're exceptionally dangerous. If you don't find them or they're not taken care of, it can cause some serious havoc on the server and give the person that has put the backdoor in place kind of whatever they want to do with the server or the site. When websites infect other websites on the same server, is cross-site contamination. We'll come back to this in a minute, but file path traversal and arbitrary file upload are definitely two of those things that kind of contribute to backdoors. Malicious redirect. It's a redirect that sends a user to a malicious site. When the visitor is redirected to a site other than the main one, the website may or may not contain a malicious payload, or it could be just a redirect to drive traffic somewhere else so that other site makes money. Cross-site scripting, these are a little more complex. Attacks are the type of injection in which malicious scripts are injected into otherwise benign and trusted websites. Example, your site has a blog post. I put some malicious snippet or script into your thing. I post it, somebody goes to view it, and when that page loads to view that article, said script runs, hence cross-site scripting. Typically, these attacks occur when an attacker uses an application to send malicious code, generally in the form of a browser-side script. I'm sure we've all experienced when we click a link to go to a page, we're anticipating to find the info we want, and we're presented with some off-color, oddball place that we had no intention of ever going to, and we just land there. That's a cross-site scripting attack. Here's kind of an example of what happens in the workflow, if you will, of what's going on. The hosting server, as we kind of talked about earlier, is where the site lives. An attacker injects that code into the site, whether it's into the database or into a script that's just stored on the page. The victim, i.e. the end user, you, me, potential clients, they go to that page and request that data. The server says, yep, here it is, and then said code is rendered and executed, and you're either redirected to the attacker and he takes control of your machine, or you're sent to another website. There's a plethora of things that can be done with cross-site scripting in the code. They get super, super, super complex. I tried to just give a basic example on this. I don't know who's got the yellow lines. Sorry guys, I got some yellow lines all over my screen. Let me see if we can't clear them. There we go. Some more common types of attacks and impact that they'll have. Ad jacking, if stored cross XSS or cross-site scripting on a website, they can inject ads into your site and make money. Click jacking, a hidden overlay on a page to hijack the clicks, which is kind of what we were talking about towards the end of redirecting you somewhere else that you didn't want to go. Session hijacking is a bit more intense. I'm going to skip that one for the moment. I'll come back to it in just a minute. Content spoofing, JavaScript with full access to the client-side code of a web application, and can be used to show or modify content. So they're overlaying content, if you will, on your site with what they want. Credential harvesting is just like what it says it is. You can use a fancy pop-up to harvest credentials. Your session is expired, please re-enter your credentials. This type of hack or attack is common. A Facebook pop-up or a Starbucks pop-up for free Wi-Fi. If you're not sure or there's not an S on the HTTP, don't do it. Go to the site, log out, log in. If you get a pop-up, and I say this with a little bit of caution, but if you ever get a pop-up, don't enter your credentials. It could be wrong. Crypto mining, which is all Bitcoin, I'm sure we've heard about it at some level, but they inject code into the site so that when the end user or person visiting gets that code and then basically controls your machine to mine Bitcoin for somebody else. So they're making money by more people visiting your site, which seems counterproductive for you, but super productive for them. Session hijacking, the reason I came back to this one is it's a little complex, and it really stems off of not having an S on your site, but HTTP cookies can be accessed by JavaScript if the HTTP only flag, meaning no S, is not present in the cookie. So if I visit your site and there's no S on your site, the data is not encrypted, I can use JavaScript to steal the cookie, which in turn would have my username and password that I put into your site to log in to steal your username and password. Might seem trivial, might not seem like a big problem at this particular phase or on your site because it's just pamphlet driven. But again, this goes back to the bigger kind of grandiose picture that if I can figure out an email address and a password because I hacked your site because it's not secured or it's out of date, I now have more info than I had when I started with and can potentially use your email address, your name, your password to log into other places. So the session hijacking and the SSL kind of go hand in hand, and it's crucial that if anybody logs into your site at any given point for anything, that it be SSL so that we can encrypt that data while it's in transit. Big impact stuff. And the directory traversal that we were talking about before. And if anybody has questions, feel free to throw them up there. And hopefully not too many people are yawning. But directory traversal or file path traversal, that's a security vulnerability that allows a hacker to read arbitrary files on the server that's running an application. What does that really mean? if I can get a file to the server or access a file on the server, it'll allow me to read data that you don't want me to read. Prevention, most effective way to prevent file traversal is vulnerabilities, passing user-supplied input to a file system, or in CMS, or kind of bring it around, passing info from WordPress to PHP, and in PHP is what makes WordPress work. If I can get PHP and WordPress to send info back and forth, I can probably get what I want out of it. Again, on the prevention side of it, applications should validate user input before processing it. Append the input to the base directory, so making sure you're passing it to the web application, and use a file system application to canonicalize or keep it within a certain area so that it can't do directory traversal. Directory traversal and what it leads to is RCE. What? I'm sure everybody's going, what? We'll circle back to RCE in just a minute. The image here that I've got on the right with the red and the green. So the item on the left is the hacker here. He's doing some manipulation to be able to get a file up to the website so that he can potentially call it and read it. And by getting that file up there, we don't know what the content is of that file. He does, and he knows what he's trying to accomplish. And so by posting that file to your site, he can call that file if we follow this little chain here. And eventually, he'll call that file because it's legitimate with some extra info and some extra characters, and it can resolve or at least render to the browser what he's looking for, in this particular case, a password file, which will give him usernames and directories and permissions, which allows that hacker to lead more into where he needs to go or who he needs to target in terms of gaining more access to get what he's after. RCE, what is RCE? The ability to trigger arbitrary code execution over a network. More specifically, a wide area network such as the internet, or a multi-location office space would be another good example. What is it? Takes a variety of forms, many forms. Basic level refers to the process by which an agent, a hacker, a CEH, an offset guy, a cybersec guy, can exploit a vulnerability to run code on a targeted machine. So if I send you an email with some specially crafted stuff on it, or send you to a web page that's got a download link, I can get that remote code execution to happen and essentially have your system or your server, the site server, call me back and give me access to what I need. By me gaining the info of your username and your password, or any of the things that we've kind of talked about previously, it's kind of like a private investigator. The more information they can get, the better off they are in terms of executing and completing an RCE or a remote code execution type of attack or vulnerability. Arbitrary file upload, which to me as a CEH and a network administrator is the thing that I worry about the most. Consequences of an unrestricted file upload can vary. Complete system takeover, overloaded file system or database, forwarding attacks to backend systems. If it's multi-tier architecture, the web server has to talk to the database server, and I can get this arbitrary file uploaded. I can get what I want from the database or a backend system. And also client-side attacks, as I was talking about just a minute ago with emails. I can send you an Excel document that has an embedded macro that you open the Excel document, nothing loads, but you executed my file. Now your system's calling me, and I have the same access rights to your system that you do. So it depends on what the application does when the file is uploaded, and especially where it's stored, to kind of determine the type of impact. This evildoer trying to hack your website goes back to what we were talking about just a minute ago with the directory file traversal. They upload a file, malicious file.txt. He calls that said file from the post, or an end user calls it because they go to the page and It's sitting right in the root of the file, and it runs when you call it. The servers just do what they're asked to do. So this is, to me, why this particular attack or this vector is the most dangerous. The reason being it's the most dangerous, web shells. What is a web shell? It's a web security threat, which is a web-based implementation of the shell concept. Shell concept comes from really Linux and you accessing a terminal or a command line type of system. A web shell is able to be uploaded to a web server to allow remote access to the web server, such as the server's web file system. A web shell is unique that it enables users to access a web server by way of web browser that acts just like a command line interface. And I believe the next screen that I have coming up will illustrate a web shell, and hopefully you guys will see why web shells and arbitrary file uploads are dangerous. And all of this we'll be pulling around. I'm getting to the meat of why all this is important and why am I talking about all this stuff. This is a web shell. In this screenshot, there's obviously some things that are grayed out, but in the screenshot, it seems fairly harmless in terms of general kind of look. But as we look through it, and we can kind of see that what's sitting here and what's in front of us is files. I can look at files, which is what's listed in front of me, file 1, file 2, file 3. I can create directories, I can execute commands, I can upload more files, I can read contents of files. Another big one that would be especially problematic would be SQL or database. If you've got an e-commerce website or a database of clients that you don't want shared, I now have access to it because I have SQL access. Brute force. Brute force allows me to enumerate and find users on the system and what their permission levels are or access levels are. And I can run tools right from this little 5K file that I can upload to your blog post and call and brute force those user accounts and ultimately take full control of this server. So whether it's on your side, your site and you host the server and it's yours, or it's GoDaddy or anywhere, having that server-side technology and keeping your sites up to date and maintenance them and just keeping track of your sites and taking care of them, it's super crucial. If you ever find something like this on your site, I encourage you to contact me as soon as you find it. Any questions, anybody, as far as web shells or any of the stuff that we've kind of talked about so far? I've tried to allocate towards the end of this webinar about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes if anybody's got questions or anything. We can exchange contact info or chat more. We can do it live or on a call or email, whatever the case may be. It's a lot of topics. It's a lot of information. It's a lot of terminology. I get it. Not everybody's going to understand it, which is okay, which is why guys like me and webFEAT Complete, we all have jobs and have things to do to help keep the world kind of running. So I definitely encourage anybody to kind of chime in at the end of this and let me know. Let's talk. Let's chat. This graphic, if you will, is the segue into CMSs and management and the housekeeping side of it. The first top left block up here is WordPress security vulnerabilities. Really kind of breaks down what the attack vectors are, what the most common areas are. And as you can see, plugins and WordPress core are the biggest piece of it. Themes, not quite as much. It's a much smaller percentage, but it's still a vector. It's still a way for somebody to get in and get or take or change what they want. Brute force goes back to user logins, SSL, using CAPTCHAs, using strong passwords, even using two-factor authentication to help keep your site protected. But brute force is the #1 attack. To state it clear as day, humans in general are lazy about passwords and they don't like remembering them and they don't like changing them. So typically when they find one that they like, they'll use it and use it and use it. File inclusion exploits, I think we covered this pretty well in the last couple of slides, so I'm not gonna beat this one up too much. WordPress websites uses MySQL database to operate. Most CMS and dynamic sites that we talked about, they all use databases. They need them. That's the way that they deliver the dynamic content. The info that you put in them for people to put up or to access and to see, that's where it gets the info from. Cross-site scripting, I think, is now hopefully a fear in everybody's mind that their site's going to be cross-site script attacked. We can deal with that. We can talk about that. Reach out to me or webFEAT in general. We can talk about it. Malware is not as common. I tend to stay on the trends and see what's going on. And there's things floating around out there. And I'm sure anybody that's reading news, Russians and plenty of people are pushing out malware, even to iPhones and Androids, that they're using malware it's been injected into your site, or it's been put somewhere for their gain. And I think we all ask the question of malware, why? What's the benefit? Unauthorized access. You got to think of it as a massive data collection, and the more data that they collect, the more info that they have. Suzette's got a question here. Do you find that WordPress plugins that you get from within WordPress search are safe? Are they checked by WordPress before offer? WP. Checked by WP, meaning, Suzette, do you mean checked by WordPress, or plugins that you get from within the WordPress search? Okay, so thank you. WordPress in general, you can, Corey may be able to chime in on this to help me out a little bit, but plugins that you find within WordPress search, I could develop one. There's been known WordPress plugins that have been uploaded to WordPress for download that have been pulled down because they're open source, code modified, and reposted as legitimate, and people use them and put them into their site. Meanwhile, the whole time they're collecting data from your site and potentially stealing user accounts and credit card information, depending on how your site functions. So WordPress in general has gotten a lot better about vetting their plugins that they post in there, but not always. That you can't assume that they're safe. And then the reason I say that is if the plugin is 12 months old and there's been no updates and it's been tested for WordPress, 5.0, it's probably not been updated in 12 months. So the code that it's running on hasn't been updated with security vulnerabilities. As much as we like to assume that they're safe, I try to not make that assumption and look at, when the last time did they update? Is it compatible with the most current version? Is there an active developer? Is it paid or unpaid? Not that the paid or unpaid part is going to make a big difference, but plugins need to be vetted and looked at from a perspective of how often are they updated? Are they staying in adherence or in the update cycle of WordPress? Can you reach out to them? Has the code been checked, and those types of things? So that subject that you're bringing up is a huge subject. I think everybody's kind of in that boat, but take the time to research it if it's going to be something that you do yourself, and really take a look at it and vet it, and how big is the vendor? What function does it really prove to you or provide to you or to your company or to your website? Maintenance, it's the name of the game. It is what it is. All businesses, all functioning things that work and make us money need maintenance. A platform or a framework-driven site known as dynamic will always need maintenance. It needs to be updated. It needs to be taken care of in two different ways. Updating, which is the most important, and second, housekeeping. As I kind of move forward in this topic, and I'll be referring to WordPress just specifically because it's the most common, it's the most popular. However, all the topics that we're getting ready to kind of talk about from a maintenance and housekeeping perspective apply to almost all dynamic sites: Drupal, WordPress, Joomla, DNN, .NET Nuke, Typo 3. I mean, that screenshot that we had early on in CMSs, they all need maintenance, all of them. Updates. Yes, I know we don't like change, but it's a good thing. And almost any IT guy that you talk to or work through a problem with is going to ask this question. Why do we ask this question? Because it's, without going into a huge conversation about all the details, the gist is features, security, code optimization, and underlying technology, it hasn't changed. A big part of these changes that are happening in updates are based on security and features. Maybe they're existing or maybe they're new. An example of this, WordPress releases on their new versions in about a 4-month cycle. It's an important item to know because as they update, plugin developers and plugin suppliers, to circle back to your question, Suzette, and theme developers may need to update their code or their calls to WordPress and its core functionality based on WordPress's change. WordPress uses MySQL and PHP and typically Apache as their core underlying technologies to make their sites run. And if PHP or MySQL updates because there's vulnerabilities or problems, then the plugin developers and theme developers need to adjust to that. And if they don't, it could leave you and your site susceptible or as a potential vector or a tax area for them to do what they want to do and get what they want. To almost reiterate, why are they updating? Why do I have to update my site? It's working just fine. I don't want to change it. If I change it, things are going to break. Well, security. Probably the most important reason why you should keep your WordPress site up to date. WordPress powers 23% of all websites in the world. I think the last time I looked, about 100,000 websites launch a day. And due to that popularity, it's a huge target for malicious code, hackers, data thieves, and anybody who's wanting to get into a website to just hone or refine their skills. Personally, during my CEH and offensive security stuff, I used WordPress and a bunch of WordPress tools to my advantage to get info about sites in a practice environment to really refine how these guys do it so that I can prevent it and stop it and be in front of that situation. Another reason why updates are important: features, plugin installation experience, or how do you add features to the site and features to you as an administrator of the site. Image editing. Some people do and do not have Photoshop or image editing skills, and you've got a picture, you took it with your phone, and now you've managed to get it up to the website, and you need to edit it, but you don't have the tools. Image editors can be a new feature that's added or available to you to add. Integration with other services. I think I name a couple good few that people are going to be super common to is going to be Constant Contact or MailChimp for communication. Another would be speed of the site, code rewriting and optimization, making the site run faster or better. Bug fixes, I think, is another big area. I think we all run into them from time to time. An error or flaw or fault in a program or system that causes it to produce what you don't want. Compatibility is another good reason for updating. Often plugins and themes coordinate their updates with major releases to take advantage of those new code and of the refactoring. However, in some cases, an update can break your site. If you're not following best practices, especially on the coder side or the developer side, with the standards of what they're doing. Housekeeping, what I mean, a well-maintained site will have much less problems and reduces its attack surface. Over time, features that you once needed, they might have changed, or you might not need them any longer. Leaving these types of things sit in your site could be compared to hiding your door key. You know it's there, nobody else knows it's there, but until somebody finds it or if somebody looks for it. And unused or unmaintained sites is kind of that same situation. You know it's there and you know you haven't updated it, and nobody else knows that until they take a look at it. Housekeeping, again, speed and security are the biggest reasons for doing the updating and housekeeping. Removing the unused plugins or themes definitely helps reduce your chances of getting hacked. Out-of-date themes and plugins are one of the major reasons that websites, specifically WordPress websites, get hacked. Even plugins that you do use, but only occasionally or seasonally, deactivate them. Just because you're not using them doesn't mean that somebody can't find them. Plugin conflicts. If you've got multiple plugins that do something similar, it can cause impacts and make your site slower, which ultimately, a slow site, if somebody hits your site and it doesn't render as fast as they want, they'll move on. Housekeeping for dynamic websites is a must, or it will be attacked at some point. It's the truth. Kind of putting it all together as we kind of wrap it up. I've hopefully taken you from the journey of you need a website to the point of having an understanding of what you need or what is needed from you to have a successful and fast and secure site. All this information that I've shown you is kind of being a webmaster of your own site. Like I said earlier, it's a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week job, which is where people like myself and webFEAT kind of fall in. Learning and staying informed in all these areas and all the different aspects. It's a lot, especially if you're running a business or you've just got your site together and now you've got to shift your mindset. It's not always easy to make that type of thing happen. So hopefully everybody got some information that was beneficial to them regarding a website, a registrar, and everything along those lines. So I kind of encouraged the last, I don't know, it looks like we ran over a little bit, but hopefully somebody's got some questions or something. Let's see. 2 or 3 simple security tips our viewers could implement on their site. SSL definitely is a tip that I would say that could be utilized. Plugins, it depends on the site. There's plugins for optimization. There's plugins that will scan your site to, check it for vulnerabilities. And WordPress particularly is pretty good about letting you know if there's a plugin that needs to be updated. There are vulnerability scanners that are online that you can run that are all typically available and out there and usually give you pretty good feedback in terms of where your site is and kind of how it stands. Anybody else? Anybody have any questions? Anything they want to chit chat about? Well, a couple more slides I'll rip through real quick. Our services, I think we kind of covered them. I know if anybody's got any questions or anything, feel free to reach out to webFEAT Complete or myself about anything that was talked about today, WordPress or hosting or social media management, Google AdWords or email marketing, what have you. Feel free to reach out. Again, we've got I believe our next event is with Justin on the 17th. So take a look at the presentation page and see if there's something you want to get registered for. Social media, obviously we've got a great social media team and an SEO team that puts out plenty of information and content. So, reach out to us on LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram and let's make a connection. Thanks, guys. Hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you guys hopefully later and talk to everybody at some point.